formed. All right, we are live. So, welcome to a new thread in this channel. I don't know if anybody's going to be catching it. I think it's something that will pick up over time, and maybe a couple people will stop by here tonight, so on and so forth. We'll see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
But for the channel, what I've decided is that there are so many great series out there that deserve to be discussed. And I think some of them are a little older than some others. There are some series, of course, that are enormous. Like, we can't cover the X-Files.
Right.
You know, that's 11 series and 2 movies, and it's like, hundreds and hundreds of episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But for small quality series, I'd like to use a once-a-week sort of format to break down these episodes and discuss them and, reinsert them back into the conversation of horror, because largely they aren't discussed.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking just a second ago before we went on the stream about relevant content. But there's so much good quality stuff that's in there that I feel that relevant content sometimes is just that. It's content.
Mm-hmm.
And my opinion on those sorts of things, a lot of times I feel that it's just spam content.
Yeah.
And that drowns out the really high quality, great story horror that I want to talk about and I want this show to be about. So that's why we're here. We're starting this first episode with a new series. Well, not a new series, but we're going to be starting it with the Netflix series, Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass. And joining me for this project, and Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass is a limited run 7-episode series, so it's relatively brief, is Eric from Hey Internet Eric here. And thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Happy to be here.
Welcome. David. Yeah, man. I know that you're a Flanagan fan.
Yes.
I am a huge Flanagan fan, same as you.
Yeah, we've talked to him. Oh God, we've already mentioned Dr. Sleep. We did an episode. We did an episode on Gerald's Game.
Yes.
And we always just in conversation, we've talked about Hush, which is a movie no one ever talks about.
Nope.
And then his 2 other previous TV shows, Legend of Hill House and
Bly
Manor. Yeah, so Flanagan's always being talked about on this channel in one form or another.
Yeah, and Flanagan, it looks like he's moving over to Amazon, to Prime
Mm-hmm.
Video, and hopefully these series get greenlit, because I was just watching another stream that says essentially Hollywood is broke. So what we're going to see in the coming months and maybe years is the quiet cancellation of many series. Or projects that are just going to be quietly shelved and just never discussed again. So I hope that's not the case with Mike Flanagan, because whenever Flanagan does something, it's a fucking hit. Because Flanagan, to me, is a real artist, and he is a fanboy in the way that Del Toro is a fanboy. Other people like Dennis Villeneuve is a fanboy. These people that when you hear their name, it's going to be fucking fire.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, let's get into Midnight Mass. I haven't seen it in a very long time, and what really got me going with this was the fact that you hadn't seen it at all.
Correct. I watched.
So you've never seen any of this before, and I'm here in the stream. I'm going to ask you, and you can agree to this or not. Sure. Would it be possible for you to limit yourself to 1 episode a week?
Since I'm doing it for the show, and I started it last night, I was very tired, so I rewatched it today, and I literally just finished it 10 minutes before we went live.
Okay.
I can, but I don't.
I know
want to.
You're gonna want. I know you're not gonna want to, and you're really not gonna want to. This was the slowest fucking, and I was like, "Fuck, I forgot," But then we'll get into why it is that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like that so that it stays fresh.
Yeah, I will make you a promise right now. I will only watch 1 episode a week.
I appreciate that. And we're going to be doing other series. I'm going to be working something out with Gore, and I'm going to try to hold him to the same, request.
And I'm okay with that because I'll just act like it's regular television. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You have
and
to wait a week to get to the next episode, anyways.
well, I mean, if it isn't Netflix or we were covering an HBO special like Gore and I were doing with The Last of Us, you would have to wait a week.
Oh, okay. They
because
don't.
HBO only does it. No, it's one episode a week.
Okay.
So you're not binging anything, and in that way, it remains in the zeitgeist for that much longer. That's the problem with Netflix. I mean, they drop something and then they drop all of it, and 10 days later, everybody's consumed it and they've moved on to the next thing. Whereas, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, me and my wife, we're guilty of that too. I mean, we say what you want, Cobra Kai. We enjoy that stupid fucking show, but we're done with it within 3 days. You give us a weekend, we're done. You know what I mean?
Stranger Things. It's the same thing.
Wednesday came out. Me and my daughter, we binge watched 9 episodes in a weekend. And then we're waiting for okay, are they gonna have a season 2? Okay, now there is a season 2, but now we still got to wait a year, type of thing. So I get it.
I mean, Cobra Kai this year, attempted murder. They just stormed Terry Silver's house, and somehow Terry Silver gets arrested, and you're like, what the fuck is going on with this show? But you can't stop watching it. It's so stupid. And you sit there and you're like, this is the dumbest fucking thing ever. But there I am watching another fucking episode.
I look at my wife, I'm like, I hate these kids. It's dumb. And don't get me wrong, I like the over the top fighting. It's fun. Yeah. But when I'm seeing Terry Silver and the villain from part 2, and they're fighting each other with samurai swords, I'm like, this is why I'm watching it. That type of stuff. But I know what I'm getting into.
Yeah,
there is a difference.
I suppose so. All right, so let's get into Midnight Mass a little bit. Yes. Let me get your initial thoughts of the first episode. I assume you're walking into it blind. You might have heard a little bit here and there about what it's about. Let me know what you've heard, and then tell me what you thought of the first episode.
Honestly, all I knew is it had to do with it was the trope of the mysterious stranger shows up in the small town where everybody knows everybody.
Yeah,
that's all I knew.
Okay.
And I knew Henry Thomas was involved because he's like the go-to boy for Mike Flanagan, which I have no problem with. Henry Thomas has been great in everything I've seen him in.
Yeah.
And then when I watched it, what I really liked, like we'll get into it, but a lot of people were saying it's a slow burn, but then it really takes off. I didn't think this episode as a first episode was really a slow burn at all, because it did a really good job establishing the characters, establishing their relationships, establishing the religious relationship the characters have on the island, with their faith. And then when it ends, holy shit, you're ready for episode 2.
Yeah. Yeah. And now the first episode, each episode is named after a different book in the Bible.
Okay.
So the very first episode is called Genesis. And so that means the creation, the beginning. So we start to meet all of the characters in a very well-constructed way. It's great writing. It's a really great story. It doesn't drag. Considering that there's no real action in it in this first episode, and it's a full hour. You're not watching some 37-minute episode or anything. Flanagan takes the full hour to introduce you to everything in this particular universe. In this small little town, I think it's called Crockett Island.
Yeah, because they call it the Crockpot.
Yeah, they call it the Crockpot. And the main character of the story is someone named Riley Flynn, who starts out the series on the side curb because he's just been involved in a DUI.
And geez, that, like I've said it before, I don't know if I've said it here or not, but I remember in my writing classes, they always say, like, if you're writing a story, if you're telling a story, you have to hook them by that first page. And this was the perfect way to hook me, because starting it like this, someone, sitting on the curb, and then you have a dead body.
Yeah.
And then just some of the things that the EMTs were saying.
Yeah.
And I think he was praying or something like that. And he says, what kind of God, like the EMT was telling him, like, what kind of God takes an 18-year-old girl but leaves a drunk to live, type of thing. So I that also set the tone, because I knew that it dealt with religion, because I knew the I guess you'd say the stranger of the town was the priest, the new priest. So I'm like, okay, here we go. Let's see how this builds up.
Yeah, it's very much this scene, and I love the imagery in this scene.
The use of the colors.
The use of color, the use of the broken glass that's been embedded in her head that is reflecting these bright, almost Christmas-style lights.
It's so pretty in such a
more
disturbing. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what we last night when we discussed Exorcist 3. When when George C. Scott walks into the hospital and his friend has been murdered. It's a disturbing scene, so much violence, but it's so clean and crisp and beautiful looking after this horrible crime has happened.
Yeah. And you're looking at this DUI, and when he sees that the paramedics stop the chest compressions, that's when the prayers start. And he's drunk, and he's slurring his words, he's trying to pray, and he's drunk, and he's just a fucking mess.
Yep.
And the paramedic doesn't say anything until the prayers start.
That's right.
And then he just looks him dead in the face, and he says, while you're at it, ask him why. Yeah, he always takes the kids. And the fucking drunks, the drunk fucks always walk away with a few scratches.
Yeah.
And that you can tell that just hits him like a ton of bricks.
Absolutely.
And you're just like, holy shit. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like I felt some sympathy for him. In that moment. I mean, I remember someone a long time ago, once said, there's save the whales and save the whatever. There's nobody out there saying save the drunk drivers. But you do feel some sympathy for this guy. He ends up going to prison for 4 years. I think he's sentenced from somewhere for 4 to 10 years. He goes to jail. And he doesn't really fight the case, but you can see that this has like destroyed his life, and it's destroyed his family's life.
Yes.
He goes to court, and his parents are with him, and they're weeping, and the victim's family is weeping, and they've been, given all, I think he's been fined, or he has to repay like a 6-figure amount of money. Yeah. So it's not just the jail sentence.
Correct.
And if I'm not, we'll talk about that in the later episode. There was something I was going to touch on, which was the financial aspect of things. But I mean, what it does, it essentially, I never thought about this really. It destroys his family. I imagine for anybody, who has a son or something like that who goes to prison, it just must be devastating, especially if you're coming from a community or from a background that isn't affiliated with any kind of crime or something, and something like this happens, and you're just like, my son is just been sent to jail to prison for 4 years,
and it due to taking someone's life.
Due to taking someone's life. What does that do with the stature in the community? These sorts of things. It must be fucking awful. And I mean, it's just terrible to fucking consider. And, he seems to go to prison without much of a fuss. They don't focus much time on the prison. But what I enjoyed, or what I saw, was that when he lies down, the camera angle went horizontal, and what he sees is still that girl
looking directly at him.
Yeah, and you can't tell if it's his guilt or if maybe her spirit is still following him around. She's not at rest.
Yeah, see, I was wondering that too, because if you don't know Flanagan's work, you might just think that's just his guilt. Every time I close my eyes, I see them, type of thing. When someone has done something like that. But if you know Flanagan's work, a lot of it is supernatural. Yeah. So I'm and like I said, I'm going episode by episode. Like, yes, it still makes me wonder: is it going to be guilt, or is it going to be something supernatural? Because Flanagan, he has no problem just throwing that curveball.
Yeah, absolutely not, and he does a fucking good job of it.
Mm-hmm.
He does a good job of it. So I mean, just kind of like that, the 4 years pass.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's maybe the first 10 minutes of the series. You know, the girl's dead. You know, you see him in court, you see him in prison, you see he's still haunted by the specter. You know, you have no idea of its origins, by the specter of this girl.
Right.
And then we flip back to the town. And what was your impression of the town?
I just took it as just the typical small fishing community. You know what I mean? Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows the cops by their first names, type of deal. You know.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how I'm going to compare it because Mike Flanagan. I kind of got an Andy Griffith show vibe.
It's a hick town.
Because it's a hick town. You have the drunk who's in there every night. That's your Otis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's just in there in the drunk tank, doesn't do any harm, just has too much beer. They let him sleep it off type of thing. And it's definitely like the perfect place to be. You said it earlier, like these things never happen, which makes sense because of, you know, obviously what will probably happen later on. But to me, it was just Mayberry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a fishing town.
It's this sleepy, kind of dying little, you know, fishing town. You know, you found out that they have suffered from some sort of ecological spill in their waters. Mm-hmm. So the fishing has become very difficult. We find out throughout the course of the episode that, you know, a town that was once numbered in the hundreds, which is still incredibly small, is now in the dozens.
Yeah, because they keep mentioning, oh, this person left, that person left too, that person left too. Yeah.
And I think at one point you know, the mother actually calls it a ghost. It's just, you know, it's a shadow of its former self. You know, barely anybody's there. You know, threadbare existences. You're looking at some of those houses. You know, they're, you know, no one's doing very well. Everyone's kind of struggling. But you know, like many small towns, everybody knows everybody, so they seem to kind of work together. And then sort of over the course of the episode, you just get to meet the different characters.
Yeah.
You get to meet the different characters. You can see, you know, that they're kids doing normal kid shit, you know, riding around on bikes, trying to score weed, you know, hiding from their parents, you know, just doing dumb fucking stuff. The one boy who's a Muslim, I think his name is Ali, is the son of the sheriff.
And I was wondering, and you could tell they're friends. His name's Ali, but his friends like call him Aladdin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's I don't want to say he's the outcast, you know, because they're probably the only Middle Eastern family in the whole fucking town. But it's just like friends ragging on each other. So that to me showed me how close and how good of a friend, you know, they were, because that's what you do. You bust balls.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. I mean, I get the impression that among many or among some, because there are only dozens.
Okay.
So, you know, that sense that, you know, a few people could make a difference. I think among some, they're not exactly well received. You know, they're outsiders. They're coming from, you know, another place, you know, and we find out later, you know, there's one lady who's more than happy to, you know, be the corrector, you know, and the finger wagger and, you know, that sort of thing. They call him Aladdin because he's a Muslim. And so, you know, maybe a Muslim doesn't fit 100% into, you know, these small sort of hick towns where everyone's predominantly Catholic and it looks like conservative Catholic. You know, these sorts of things. So you meet the kids and then you meet Erin, who is, oh God, I can't remember. What's her name? Her real name. Is it Katie Siegel?
Yes, that name is. I know that name's in the credits. Yes.
Yeah, Katie Siegel. I think that's Flanagan's wife.
Yes, because she was in Hush.
Yeah, Katie Siegel is Flanagan's wife, and so she is another of his go-to people for series. You've also got, and she's Erin. She's pregnant. Another person who's sort of returning to this town. You've got the great, and I love her to death, Annabeth Gish, who I remember fondly from the X-Files.
Okay.
She was Monica Reyes. She was one of the FBI agents in the later seasons. So I hadn't seen her in ages, and of course she got some sort of, you know, close cut haircut that I don't necessarily like. But she's pregnant, and so you're meeting these people.
Mhm.
You're meeting the sheriff, who seems like a decent enough guy.
Yeah.
And like you said, you got, was it John the drunk?
Yeah.
Joe.
Joe, I
Joe
think.
the drunk. And so you're sort of spending the better part of the episode, just being introduced to these different characters. You've got Beverly, the buzzard, who just sort of, henpecks at everybody, and,
Mhm.
just sort of, you can tell she's kind of a bully,
Yeah, I
among those that will listen or are too
could
polite to.
definitely tell, because when she corrects the new sheriff, saying that the church always took care of the people when, to help bunker down during storms and this and that, you could tell she's always used to getting her way.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know this is going to be the type of character that, okay, we're going to have some fucking problems with her.
Yeah. There's going to be a problem later on with this knucklehead. More than, I guess, a problem, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So, 4 years go by, and Riley has returned to Crockett, and you can tell I don't think he really wants to be there.
He's very uncomfortable.
He's very uncomfortable. His father, played by Henry Thomas, has refused to meet him at the dock, because they come in on the boat, on these ferry boats that bring them over. It's just his mother. And he doesn't know what to do with himself. He's been in prison for 4 years. He was a professional and seemingly making a lot of money at one point before his whole life went down the shitter. And now he's in the last place that he ever wanted to be, his little hick crockpot hometown again. And his father is, go ahead.
I was going to say, and like I said, because there is a scene later where him and the girl, they're catching up, and they talk about, moving to the big cities and stuff. That's where he made his life. You know what I mean? Now he's back home. And like we've already stated, everybody knows everybody. So everyone knows where he's been for 4 years.
Yeah.
So he's going to have a lot of people just watching him.
And in that way that small towns operate, you have absolutely zero privacy.
Exactly.
Because everybody just has no consideration for that. For privacy, everything sort of belongs to the community. And so, people are staring at him when they see him walking down the street. And even in his own house, there's a great deal of discomfort. His father doesn't know how to speak to him. You can tell that his father's kind of angry.
Very.
And so he's in this place, and I'm reminded of that line from The Last Samurai where he talks about he's treated like an unwelcome house guest, in his own family's house.
Oh, especially when we get to the dinner scene.
Yeah. And he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to do there. It's a difficult position that he's in. And you would think that, for someone who had killed a young girl, Flanagan wouldn't necessarily portray him in this sympathetic light. But he does, and it works.
Yeah. Because I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because he feels like such an outcast. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not making light of him getting drunk and getting behind the wheel. Not making light of that at all. But you do feel sympathy for him, just mainly, I think, with the family dynamic. He's got a good relationship, you can tell, with the little brother. Him and dad, who knows what dad really thinks about him, but there's so much tension with them.
Yeah.
And mom, poor old mom, she's doing her best just trying to keep this fucking family together. And you can see
not to have a nuclear bomb go off in her house.
I was thinking that it's like, trying to cup water, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's still going through your fingers. You know what I mean?
Yeah. At some point you imagine that they're going to have to get into it.
Yep.
They're going to have to get into it. And maybe, once things have settled down for a little bit, they can in an adult kind of way. But you can tell that lots of things are coming out sideways.
Yep.
With them. Now, one of the things I really liked about this, and unfortunately it's not something that, I can share here on the, well, maybe I can, is the score. Did you notice anything about the score?
Honestly, off the top of my head, no.
Okay. The next time you're watching it,
Mhm.
check for that score.
Okay.
It's pretty fucking chilling.
Okay.
Hold on, see if I can pull it up here on Spotify. No. It's all no. They're all hymnals. They're all hymnals. Okay. So, but even a couple of times, throughout the series, they actually used religious hymnals, Christian hymnals,
Yeah, that
and
that
I
that I
was just
noticed.
like that kind of drew me in. Like you
Mhm.
don't see like they abide with me. They
Mhm.
did that one version of abide with me, and you're like, oh, okay, that's
Mhm.
fucking different.
Yeah, and I liked it because like I said, it's these nice church hymnals and stuff like that, but it's in a show where something bad's going to happen, so it's like that false sense of security that I
Yeah,
thought.
yeah.
Hmm.
And we get to Joe, who's in the drunk tank,
Hmm.
saying that he was this. I don't know if you picked up on this, but I'm going to bring it up.
Sure.
Saying he was attacked by a giant albatross.
I didn't remember. No.
Okay, yeah, because the sheriff says
Hmm.
he's swinging something, but he's so drunk he can't hit whatever he's swinging at,
That's right.
which works out well for him. And he tries to tell the sheriff that he was attacked by a giant albatross.
Hmm.
That comes into play later.
Okay.
That's going to come into play later, and I'm
Right on.
not going to get into how. But even when we get to the scene on the island where the boys are smoking the weed,
Hmm.
there's the one boy who swears up and down that he sees something.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's going to come into play later.
Okay.
There are lots of things that are happening here that are very slight, but that actually fucking matter.
I noticed this is definitely, now that what you said about the albatross, this is definitely going to be a show where you're going to have to pay attention to the dialogue, because what happens at the end of the episode when they're on the beach just smoking weed. One of the boys mentions how, I don't know if it's dead fish or dead something, just keep floating up to the shore. And how
Yeah,
does he know? Because he's the one that has to clean it up, type of thing.
yeah,
So you definitely, there's a lot of good foreshadowing
yeah.
that Flanagan has here. You can
I
tell.
mean, you can see that one scene where the kid shines the flashlight, and you just see the eyes. I love that scene where they're
Hmm.
smoking the weed, but the cat's eyes are just everywhere,
Yeah.
reflecting in the light. It's so fucking creepy, and
Hmm.
the background noises of all the different cats as they're mewling and yowling, and you can't tell if they're dying or fucking, or the kids are just like,
If you've never had one of those nights where you're just like, say you wake up, you're going to go to the bathroom and get yourself a midnight snack or something, and you hear cats fighting outside your house. That's the scariest fucking thing that you can hear. You know what I
it
mean? It's
sounds like
so
World
creepy
War
and uncomfortable.
Three.
Yeah.
you know.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, he's trying to settle in. Riley is, and then of course, we have the big blow up at the dinner table, which
Yeah.
is kind of just a precursor to how everybody's really feeling,
Hmm.
where they start making jokes about old Monsignor Pruitt.
Right.
Monsignor Pruitt has the Monsignor of the local parish has gone on a trip to the Holy Land, and
Hmm.
they start making jokes like, "Why the hell would you send an 80-year-old man to the Holy Land by himself?" And they start making all these cracks. But I just, I was an altar boy. The two brothers,
Yeah.
they actually seem to sort of get along and
Hmm.
sink in. You
Yeah.
know, and they, Riley's talking about how he got in only just to be around the girls, a guy
Right.
in uniform, these sort of thing. And that just sets Henry Thomas
Yeah.
off.
Dad gets fucking pissed and he gets
Yeah,
up
you
and
want to go
leaves.
ahead. Yeah.
Well,
What did
that's what I like, because we've always mentioned, like, Henry Thomas. I grew up with Henry Thomas, E.T., Cloak and Dagger,
yeah.
that type of stuff. But since he became an adult actor, he's pretty much done, in my opinion, unless he's done other stuff. It's mainly Mike Flanagan stuff. He's always that role that
Yeah.
you remember. Gerald's Game. You're not going to forget what he does in Gerald's Game.
No, you're not.
And even when he's in Doctor Sleep, he's fantastic in Doctor Sleep. And here, what I really like about him, at least in this first episode, he's very subtle. You know what I mean? It's more body language, and he's got prosthetics on his face to make him look older, obviously. But his eyes, watch his eyes. You see the fury and the disdain, and in his eyes, like he could give he'll give Riley that look of death. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you believe it. And like I said, it's funny coming from me. He's always going to be little Elliot from E.T. You know what I mean? Growing up, but the look of death he gives Riley when they're just fucking around and making those jokes about the Monsignor, you realize that he would just love to backhand him,
or just strangle him. You know, right there. Because
it's like this is like, I bet you he was probably thinking. I said, you've been in prison for 4 fucking years, killing a girl, and now you're here making jokes. Do you have any idea what's happened since you've been gone? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's almost kind of an unfair thing because his father, at the one hand, doesn't seem to want to talk to him. He doesn't meet him.
Mm-hmm.
But you understand why,
right?
And because no one will actually express what they're feeling, it turns into these unrelated sort of, arguments. That's really not the problem. The problem about him making jokes about the church really isn't the problem, but it's two guys, and so they're father and son too. So they're not going to be discussing how they really feel.
Exactly.
And it's all going to come out the wrong way, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
We meet lots of other people. We got Beverly, but overhanging all of this also, there's two things. One, there's a huge storm coming.
Right.
And so for a fishing community, coastal town, bad storms are a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to prepare for that. I mean, they're veterans because they're all local, so they know, how to deal with these sorts of things. But also, it's supposed to be the return of Monsignor Pruitt from the Holy Land. And he doesn't come back.
Right.
Who they end up getting is someone that they don't know at all. You end up meeting Father Paul Hill, who just seems like a really affable guy.
He does, and they introduce him, I think, really well, because you got the two altar boys, and they're doing their, their business, lighting the candles and filling up, the wine and stuff like that. And one of them asks, "Hey, do you want to fill this up?" And he's like, "Someone already did." Yeah. And then what I really liked is how Flanagan, because I don't know if he directs every episode, but he directed this one. It's a door opening. You see the gold, I don't know the proper way to say it, but like the gold suit, cloak, whatever he's wearing. And then that's it. Boom. Then we cut to everybody in church. And then everybody's getting prepared. You see the altar boys looking down, walking down. And again, small town, everybody knows everybody. Every single person is looking at that third body. Yeah. And the shock on their face, like, who the fuck is this stranger?
Yeah.
And it's nothing's being said.
No.
We keep saying it. It's an ongoing theme on this channel.
Yeah.
Less is more. And this is the perfect use of that.
And doing less, John, this is John's, thing, doing nothing and making it look interesting.
Yes.
Every eye in that church is focused on this stranger walking down the aisle, as he moves up into the, to the altar. And they're just like, who the hell is this? And, he's Father Paul Hill, and he explains that, Monsignor Pruitt, fell a little ill during his trip. So he's been sent to a hospital off the island.
Yep.
And there's no need for concern. He'll be back with them soon. But he's here temporarily to, conduct the mass and run the church and, to be there, should they need him. And believe me when I tell you, in a Catholic church, having a regular pastor, it's a bit, I guess any church, you get used to that regular pastor up there. Okay, saying the thing, he becomes a part of the community, a kind of a leader in the community, to be perfectly honest. We also come up with this other sub-thread that's been happening in there, and I guess you saw this too, on that little island where the boys go to smoke the weed. Someone's killing those cats.
Yeah.
You see this one cat just get fucking yoked. Get fucking yoked up.
It's in the dark, and it walks by, and I think it stops at the body of a dead cat.
Of a dead cat, yeah.
And then, like you said, it's literally just yanked off camera, off screen, behind like the tall grass, and it's something. Because that's kind of a trope too. Like when animals are killed, it's definitely something otherworldly doing this.
It's something, and more, as the saying goes, more will be revealed.
Okay.
As we continue, I thought it was a really good scene between Katie Siegel and Riley, Erin. Her name is Erin Green, because they are both people who have left this small town, never wanted to come back to it again. And now, life has kind of beaten them down in the outside world, in the big world out there. And now they're back here where they don't want to be really. Erin is pregnant, and we don't know the details of that. It looks like there is a marriage, but
she said they said something about they said something about he says, oh, so you're pregnant, yeah, and it's something like, it's a long story. You're married? No, that's an even longer story. That type of deal. So
and this idea that there are going to be a lot of religious themes here. There are going to be a lot of religious themes. Riley comes out and says, I read everything in jail, in prison. I read the Bible, I read the Torah, I read the Quran, I read the Tao Te Ching, all these, Jainism, these, weird Indian religions, all these different things. And he goes, I came out a fucking atheist.
Yeah, I like the line. He says, you're usually looking for, you're looking for God in prison, so I figured I'd try everything, something like that.
But his problem is, and he says it, I just exist now. Like I serve no purpose here. I get up, I breathe, I sit down, maybe eat some food.
Yeah, what's the point?
Yeah, what's the point of me being back here again? His dad doesn't really seem to want him. But I mean, as a condition of his parole, and actually his father tells him that going to church is a condition of his parole.
Because he was adamant against not going.
Yeah, and you could see why.
Absolutely.
And like he tells that to Father, Father Hill. I'm really not in a state of grace right now. Maybe I shouldn't be here. And Father Hill's like, well, those are the people that are supposed to. To be here. The people that are in a state of grace, they don't need much.
Yeah. He said something to the fact that, like, those are the people that Jesus looked out for.
Yeah.
The ones that weren't in the state of grace.
Yeah, those were the ones that actually needed needed to hear it. That sort of thing. And so, you really end up liking Father Paul.
Yeah, he's very charismatic, but in a very simple way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He knows how to speak.
Yeah. And then, long story short, the storm hits. And Riley swears that he can see Monsignor Pruitt on the beach, running. And his family's like, no, it can't be Monsignor Pruitt. He's out there, on the mainland, this sort of thing. And, no, he's not.
Right.
Or somebody's out there. Somebody's on the fucking beach. And I mean, hold on. I'm trying to pull up the shot here.
Sure.
It's not that awful a storm, but I guess you could see why they'd want to batten down the hatches.
Right.
So on and so forth. And, he sees this fucking figure dressed just like the Monsignor, in the trench coat and the fedora, and all these different things. And Riley runs out of his house in front of his family and starts chasing this guy down, who just sort of vanishes out in the open.
Yeah, because Riley trips and falls in the sand.
Yeah, and then but when he looks up, he's gone.
Right.
He's fucking gone. And that's pretty much the extent of the storm. We're pretty much coming to the close of the episode, and till we wake up the next morning, and all these houses are right there on the beach, and it's kind of a shitty beach.
Right.
This is not Miami Beach or Bali or any of these other sorts of things. And they wake up, and all the fucking dead cats are littered on the fucking beach. And you're just like, wow, that's really fucking foul. And the seagulls are eating the dead fucking cats. And that's how the episode ends.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of like a cliffhanger ending. And that's the premiere episode.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, again, just look at that. It's that image you just had. It's a disgusting thing that's happened. All these dead animals on the beach, the seagulls eating. But look at the background; it's just so fucking pretty. You know what I mean? It's that perfect mixture. I think so.
I thought, and you know, I guess we're in contrast here because I think these houses just look like they're dilapidated. I think it's all sort of dying.
Okay, I think it just looks like one of those like a pretty painting that you would see in like a museum somewhere, and then in the front of it you have this mess of tragedy, I guess you would say. You know, all the dead cats. But
okay, well, yeah, all right. Well, but I mean, you know, that's pretty much how the episode ends, with a bunch of fucking dead cats on the beach, and that is book 1, Genesis, the beginning. The creation, you know, everything that is going to happen will be brought up in the next episode. Now, this is going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult because I'm actually going to stick to one episode a week.
Okay.
And I'm going to want to rewatch this. I'm going to want to buzzsaw through.
And you've already seen this. I haven't seen
it but it was like 4 years. What was it? 2-3 years ago?
Yeah,
it just came out, something like that.
Maybe 2 years ago. Yeah.
So, I mean, because he's actually due to release The Fall of the House of Usher this year.
Yes, and he's been working on that for a while.
Yeah, so it'd be nice, you know, maybe we finish this up. Who knows when the House of Usher is going to drop? Maybe we can cover that.
Sure.
Although I don't know how to do that because they're going to drop everything at once. And unless we ration we'll have to talk about it.
Yeah.
How we ration ourselves on that. So, I mean, what did you think of the episode? Was it worthwhile?
Like I said, what I liked about it is it was done really well for me with the characters. There was no real big exposition dump. We met them what felt like, you know, naturally. I don't hate the teenagers because, you know me, I was kind of like you a while ago, you know, with, you know, young actors. I like these actors. They seem fine. I like the tension building. I like how we know it's going to go somewhere. And one thing I got to ask that I'm sure is going to come into play we didn't mention is that big trunk that is brought inside. But I don't remember who brought it in. But,
you never exactly see.
Okay.
You know, because I know.
Right.
So I looked this time. I'm like, yeah, you don't exactly see who it is.
So I'm really like I said, the acting is good. Everything was well paced, and that's the first thing I thought of when I finished the episode. Is a lot of people were praising the show, like I said earlier, but they said it's a slow burn. I didn't think there was anything slow in this episode at all.
This is slow compared to what's coming.
Okay. Because I thought maybe they were just expecting, you know, stuff boom, boom, boom to happen. I thought it was kind of like a natural progression of learning everything. I really enjoyed it. And now the anticipation is going to gnaw at me now that we have to wait a week.
Yeah, and you know something, but I mean, I'm going to stick it out with you.
Yep.
I'm going to wait a full week before watching the next episode. We have tons of content, you know, that we're going to be working on. So there are lots of things to, you know, fill our calendar, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, the first episode, I understand what happens in the later 6 episodes. So I was like, well, this is a little, but then a little, you know, slow-ish, but not slow. But then I was like, no, this isn't slow. It's just a really, really good way that he's unrolling the whole town for us.
Okay.
You know, and you're meeting everybody in small little pieces, but with just enough information that you sort of get an accurate sense of who each of these people are, especially when you contrast them with that one buzzard. You know, who's just, you know, railing on the one guy about his dog, and she's railing on the sheriff, and she was
railing on him because he wore gold instead of green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's even railing against
the new guy in town made a mistake, at least according to him, you know, for what I know, and she just wouldn't let it go. You know, he's according to him, he's filling in for the Monsignor who's sick. He couldn't find the green outfit. He put on the gold, and she just didn't care. You know, what you did was wrong, and she was going to let him know about it.
Yeah, and it needed to be fixed. It wasn't enough to tell her about it. It has to be done the way that she wants it to be done. Because if he had just said, "Okay, have a nice day. Yeah. Thanks for letting me know," that probably wouldn't have gone well.
No.
There would have been a future problem. So we're going to see how all of these characters roll out, and everyone is there for a purpose. And I think that that's kind of cool in the sense that they brought this town together where, like you said, there's only a couple of dozen people. So everybody that's in here, there's going to be no, extras. Every character that you meet is going to serve a very important purpose.
Good,
really good stuff. I'm very excited to be doing this.
This was a lot of fun. I kind of like this concept of just like discussing a TV show once a week, especially if it's something like Flanagan, because I know I'm in for a ride.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the point, to cover the best stuff and to try to reintroduce this to the spotlight. So there you go. All right. Plug something.
Okay. My YouTube channel, Hey Internet Eric here. I just finished the From Dusk Till Dawn trilogy. I got all those videos up, and I got coming up next, the next franchise for my buddy Mike here, where I'm going to be discussing the Underworld series. Very excited about that. I've seen the first 3. I remember enjoying the first 3. The last 2, I have no idea how they go, but.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay.
But it's Kate Beckinsale in leather as a vampire fighting werewolves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly.
Can't wait to revisit.
I've got all 5 of them on Blu-ray. I know exactly what you're talking about. I will be here on Sunday. It looks like with Goraphobe, we're going to be taking on another series from episode 1. Gore and I, it looks like, are going to be covering the famous Showtime series Penny Dreadful. I cannot be more excited to cover Penny Dreadful. It is not 7 episodes. It's about 10 episodes per season. So this is going to be sort of a longish kind of thing, but it's just such a great fucking series. And the great part about it is, I think, when doing these series, is that the episodes are short enough that you don't get overloaded.
Okay.
You won't get overwhelmed. You won't get overwhelmed. So I look forward to that. And then on Wednesday, we'll be covering here on this show Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy.
Yep.
And then we'll be back next Thursday for episode 2.
They got another Hellboy coming out. They literally just released who was cast as Hellboy.
Oh, who is it?
I don't know the actor. I only know him from Deadpool 2. He played Black Tom Cassidy in Deadpool 2. He was one of the mutants that were in the prison. But they just announced that they cast him today.
Okay, I'll have to look that up. All right. My thanks to Eric from Hey Internet Eric here. Unlike movies, we don't have to go for 2 hours on on one episode, one quick episode. So my thanks, and we'll see you next week for the next episode.
All right. Cheers.
All right, guys. Have a good one, everybody.